Today we're diving into the fascinating world of ecological theory, focusing on the principle of maximum information entropy or MaxEnt. This statistical approach is transforming how scientists predict biodiversity patterns and understand the distribution of species across ecosystems. Unlike traditional models that require us to choose which mechanisms are most important, MaxEnt sidesteps this challenge by using available data to make the least biased predictions possible. Throughout this video, we'll explore how MaxEnt works, its successes and limitations, and why it's becoming a foundational tool for modern ecology. MaxEnt stands for maximum information entropy. In simple terms, it's a method for making predictions when we have limited information. Instead of assuming which ecological processes are most important, MaxEnt uses what we already know, like the number of species or individuals in an area, to predict the most likely patterns. It's a statistical inference technique that's been successful in fields as diverse as thermodynamics, economics, and now ecology. By maximizing entropy, MaxEnt ensures that predictions are as unbiased as possible, given the constraints of our prior knowledge. One of the most exciting applications of MaxEnt in ecology is the maximum entropy theory of ecology, or MEET. MEET is a spatially explicit theory that predicts biodiversity, abundance, and resource allocation across habitats and taxonomic groups. By using state variables, like the total number of individuals, species, and metabolic rates, MEET can forecast how species and resources are distributed in an ecosystem. This approach is powerful because it works across different spatial scales and doesn't require adjustable parameters, making it broadly applicable. State variables are the backbone of MEET. Think of them as the ecological equivalents of pressure and volume in thermodynamics. In ecology, these might include the total number of species, individuals, and the total metabolic rate in a given area. By knowing these values, MEET can predict the shapes of key ecological distributions, such as how individuals are spread across species or how body sizes vary within a community. This analogy to physics helps make complex ecological systems more predictable and understandable. MaxEnt principle works by maximizing the uncertainty, or entropy of a probability distribution, given the constraints of our prior knowledge. This means that rather than making assumptions about which outcomes are most likely, MaxEnt spreads probability as evenly as possible, only narrowing it where the data require. In practice, this leads to predictions that are least biased and consistent with what we already know, but not more specific than the evidence allows. This approach is especially useful in ecology, where systems are complex and mechanisms are often unclear. In this context, entropy refers to information entropy, a measure of uncertainty about the outcome of a random event. The more uniform a probability distribution, the higher its entropy. For example, if every species in an ecosystem is equally likely to be found, our uncertainty is high, and so is the entropy. MaxEnt maximizes this uncertainty, ensuring that our predictions don't introduce bias beyond what the data support. This concept is central to making fair and reliable predictions in ecology. You might wonder, why not just assume everything is equally likely, a uniform distribution? The answer is that real-world data often come with constraints. For example, we might know the average number of individuals per species or the total metabolic rate in an area. A uniform distribution would ignore these constraints and likely make inaccurate predictions. MaxEnt, on the other hand, incorporates these constraints, ensuring that predictions are both unbiased and consistent with what we already know. The original MEET model, called ASNE, uses 4 key state variables: area, number of species, number of individuals, and total metabolic rate. With these, ASNE predicts a wide range of ecological patterns, including how metabolic energy is distributed among individuals and how individuals are distributed among species in space. These predictions are made without adjustable parameters, relying solely on the values of the state variable. ASNE's predictions have been tested across various habitats and taxonomic groups, often with impressive accuracy. One of ASNE's most notable successes is predicting species-area relationships, or SARs. SARs describe how the number of species increases with the area surveyed. ASNE predicts that when plotted correctly, SARs from different ecosystems collapse onto a universal curve. This means we can compare ecosystems of different sizes, types, and taxa using the same framework. Empirical data show that ASNE's predictions often match observed SARs better than traditional power law models. ASNE also predicts the shape of species, abundance distributions, or SADs. These distributions show how common or rare different species are within a community. The ASNE model predicts a specific mathematical form, the Fisher log series, which often fits real-world data well. However, there are exceptions, especially in ecosystems that are disturbed or rapidly changing. These cases highlight the limits of the model and point to areas where further refinement is needed. Another key prediction of ASNE is the distribution of metabolic rates across individuals in an ecosystem. This helps ecologists understand how energy is allocated among organisms. Empirical studies have shown that ASNE's predictions for metabolic rate distributions are often realistic, supporting the idea that simple state variables can capture complex ecological patterns. However, as with SADs, there are cases where the predictions don't fully match observations, especially in dynamic or disturbed systems. Common criticism of MaxEnt-based theories like MEET is that they lack explicit mechanisms. Traditional ecological models often focus on specific processes like competition or predation. MaxEnt, by contrast, relies on statistical inference from state variables. Some argue that this is a weakness, but others point out that the values of the state variables themselves are shaped by underlying mechanisms. In this way, MaxEnt can capture the effects of many processes without needing to specify each one. The idea here is that mechanisms are implicit in the values of state variables. For example, the number of species in an area results from a combination of evolutionary, ecological, and environmental processes. By using these values as constraints, MaxEnt indirectly incorporates the effects of these mechanisms. The theory doesn't predict the values themselves, but once they are known, it can make accurate predictions about patterns in the ecosystem. It's important to note that many scientific theories are non-mechanistic. For example, in physics, the Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution of molecular energies can be derived without specifying the mechanisms behind molecular motion. Similarly, quantum theory relies on mathematical principles rather than explicit mechanisms. MaxEnt follows this tradition, providing a powerful framework for prediction even when mechanisms are complex or unknown. Given the immense complexity of ecological systems with countless interactions and traits, it's sometimes reasonable to ignore specific mechanisms. In many cases, no single process dominates enough to shape large-scale patterns. This is similar to the logic behind neutral theory in ecology, which assumes that all species are functionally equivalent at large scales. MaxEnt takes this a step further by focusing on the constraints provided by state variables rather than the details of individual interactions. Interestingly, MaxEnt can also help identify which mechanisms matter most. When predictions fail, it often points to missing or mismeasured constraints. For example, if a MaxEnt model fails to predict species abundance in a disturbed ecosystem, it may signal that additional variables, like disturbance frequency or resource availability, are important. In this way, MaxEnt doesn't just make predictions, it guides further research by highlighting gaps in our understanding. It isn't limited to the original ASNE model. By adding new state variables such as water availability, the theory can be extended to predict new patterns. For instance, including water as a constraint changes the predicted shape of the species, abundance distribution, increasing the predicted number of rare species. This flexibility allows meat to adapt to different ecological contexts and improve its predictive power. Another way to extend meat is by incorporating higher taxonomic categories like families or genera as additional state variables. This approach, called AFSNE, allows the theory to predict new metrics such as the family-area relationship and the distribution of species richness across families. Including more detailed taxonomic information can improve the accuracy of predictions, especially for relationships between abundance and metabolic rate. Current ASNE version of meat is a static theory, meaning it doesn't account for changes over time. However, ecosystems are often dynamic, with species coming and going, resources fluctuating, and disturbances occurring. Extending meat to include dynamic processes such as the time evolution of state variables could help explain patterns in rapidly changing or disturbed ecosystems. This is an active area of research in ecological theory. While MaxEnt often makes accurate predictions, it's not infallible. Failures can occur for several reasons: incorrect or incomplete prior knowledge, misidentified influential variables, or the use of additional constraints that introduce bias. In rapidly changing ecosystems, prior knowledge may quickly become outdated, leading to inaccurate predictions. Recognizing these limitations is crucial for refining models and improving ecological understanding. Prior knowledge is the foundation of MaxEnt predictions. This includes empirical data that can be expressed as constraints on probability distributions, such as the mean, variance, or range of a variable. The quality and relevance of this information directly affect the accuracy of predictions. If the constraints are well chosen and accurately measured, MaxEnt can provide powerful insights into ecological patterns. Most common measure of information entropy used in ecology is Shannon entropy. It quantifies the uncertainty in a probability distribution and serves as the basis for diversity indices that combine species richness and evenness. Shannon entropy is maximized when all outcomes are equally likely, but in practice, constraints from empirical data shape the distribution. This measure is central to the MaxEnt approach in ecological modeling. While Shannon entropy is widely used, other measures exist such as Sally's entropy. Sally's entropy is useful for systems with long-range interactions or memory effects or those far from equilibrium. Although Shannon entropy appears most appropriate for many ecological systems, exploring alternative measures could help model more complex or dynamic ecosystems. This is an area where further research may yield new insights. Statistical physics, the distribution of molecules across energy states can be explained by the counting of states argument, which leads to the maximization of Shannon entropy. This approach assumes a large number of objects and, depending on the context, their distinguishability. In ecology, MaxEnt provides a more general framework that doesn't require these assumptions, making it broadly applicable to diverse ecological systems. Numerous studies have tested the predictions of meat, especially the ASNE model, across a wide range of ecosystems and taxonomic groups. These tests have generally confirmed the model's ability to predict species area relationships, species abundance distributions, and metabolic rate distributions. However, discrepancies remain, particularly in disturbed or rapidly changing systems, highlighting the need for further refinement and extension of the theory. ASNE predicts a relationship between species abundance and average metabolic rate, consistent with the Damoth rule, which links population density to body size. However, empirical support for this rule is mixed, with many datasets showing considerable scatter. Including higher taxonomic categories or additional constraints in meat may help resolve these discrepancies and improve the model's predictive power. Recent extensions of meat, such as AFSNE, incorporate information about higher taxonomic categories like families. This allows the model to predict new relationships, such as the family-area relationship and the distribution of species richness across families. These extensions can dramatically change predictions for abundance and metabolic rate relationships, offering new avenues for testing and refining ecological theory. Adding more resource constraints to meat, such as water or nutrients, changes the predicted shape of the species abundance distribution. More constraints generally increase the predicted fraction of rare species. This makes intuitive sense. More limiting resources can create more specialized niches, allowing rare species to persist. These predictions can be tested empirically to further refine the theory. Better capture the realities of changing ecosystems, researchers are exploring dynamic versions of meat. These models would account for the time evolution of state variables, such as changes in species richness or resource availability. Incorporating dynamics could help explain why static models sometimes fail in rapidly changing or disturbed systems and provide a more complete understanding of ecological patterns. It can also be extended to include information about food webs, such as the number of linkages between species. By treating these linkages as state variables, the theory can predict the distribution of trophic connections across a network. This approach demonstrates the flexibility of state variable-based theories and their potential to explain a wide range of ecological patterns. There are many opportunities to extend meat. For example, the current ASNE model is static and uses species as the default taxonomic level. Future versions could incorporate dynamic processes, higher taxonomic levels, or additional resources, including phylogenetic information could also improve predictions. These extensions will help make meat a more comprehensive and flexible tool for ecological research. MaxEnt doesn't replace mechanism-based models, instead it complements them. By providing unbiased predictions based on empirical constraints, MaxEnt can highlight where mechanism-based models are needed. When MaxEnt predictions fail, it often points to missing mechanisms or variables, guiding further research. Together, these approaches can help achieve a more predictive and comprehensive understanding of biodiversity. MaxEnt approach allows ecologists to predict detailed patterns in the distribution, abundance, and energetics of individuals and species across a wide range of spatial scales. By using information from a small number of state variables, MaxEnt provides a powerful tool for understanding and forecasting biodiversity patterns, even in complex and poorly understood systems. Despite its successes, MaxEnt and MEAT have limitations. They rely on accurate and relevant prior knowledge and may fail in rapidly changing or highly disturbed ecosystems. Future research will focus on refining the models, incorporating additional constraints, and developing dynamic versions. By addressing these challenges, MaxEnt-based theories can become even more powerful tools for ecological prediction. Beyond theory, MaxEnt has practical applications in conservation. For example, MaxEnt-based software is widely used for mapping species distributions, planning conservation areas, and predicting wildfire activity. These tools help decision-makers allocate resources more effectively and protect biodiversity in a changing world. MaxEnt is helping to build a unified theory of macroecology, linking patterns of diversity, abundance, and energetics across scales and ecosystems. By focusing on empirical constraints rather than assumed mechanisms, MaxEnt provides a common framework for comparing different ecosystems and testing ecological hypotheses. One striking example of MaxEnt's predictive power is the universal species area relationship SAR curve. By plotting the local slope of the SAR against the ratio of abundance to species richness, ASNE predicts that data from different ecosystems will collapse onto a single curve. This has been confirmed in multiple studies, demonstrating the broad applicability of MaxEnt-based models. By adding more resource constraints, such as water or nutrients, MEAT predicts an increase in the fraction of rare species. This prediction aligns with observations in ecosystems with multiple limiting resources. Testing these predictions helps refine the theory and improve our understanding of the factors that promote rarity and diversity. Including the number of linkages in a food web as a state variable allows MEAT to predict the distribution of trophic connections. This extension demonstrates the flexibility of the MaxEnt approach and its potential to explain complex network structures in ecology. In ecosystems undergoing rapid change, such as those affected by disturbance or diversification, ASNE predictions often fail. This highlights the need for dynamic versions of MEAT that can account for changing state variables over time. Developing these models is a key challenge for future research. Incorporating phylogenetic information such as evolutionary relationships between species could further improve MEAT's predictions. This extension would allow the theory to account for shared evolutionary history, which can influence patterns of diversity and abundance. MaxEnt-based models are widely used in conservation planning, from mapping species distributions to predicting the impacts of climate change. These practical applications demonstrate the value of MaxEnt as both a theoretical and applied tool in ecology. MaxEnt software has also been used to predict wildfire activity by modeling the distribution of environmental variables. This helps land managers anticipate and respond to fire risks, protecting both ecosystems and human communities. By combining MaxEnt predictions with spatial data, ecologists can identify biodiversity hotspots, areas with high species richness or unique communities. This information is crucial for prioritizing conservation efforts and allocating resources effectively. Summary: the MaxEnt principle offers a powerful new lens for understanding and predicting ecological patterns. By focusing on empirical constraints and maximizing information entropy, MaxEnt provides unbiased predictions that can guide both theory and practice. As researchers continue to refine and extend these models, MaxEnt is poised to become a cornerstone of ecological theory, helping us better understand and protect the diversity of life on Earth.